Welcome to Raging Bullets, a DC Comics fan podcast, episode 196A. Welcome to Raging Bullets. I'm Sean Whalen, drnorge on the comic forums, and I'm joined as always by my co-host Jim, the sensei of the whatnot Segulin, and the Duke of you-know. I'm in the middle of report card time right now, so I had edited together two of the segments so far for this particular episode, and rather than wait to put out the show and delay it again because of my schedule right now, I've got like 2 hours worth of podcast here already done. So what we have here is Green Lantern issue number 49, which includes Secret Six, Catwoman, and Power Shazam. So it was kind of cool to talk about these segments, and it really did wrap up into a nice, neat first part to this podcast. We're going to do a part two, and on part two it will include the Green Lantern Corps discussion that I didn't have a chance to edit together yet. We have some closing comments from Myron. There's some listener voicemails. I'd also like to Skype Jim in and talk about the most recent Outsiders issue that just came out, Dan DiDio taking over with Philip Tan on art. I think it's a book that's going to generate some kind of controversy. I think it's going to be a fun one to talk about. I don't know how Jim felt about the book yet. He doesn't know how I feel. So I think it'd be kind of a fun book to talk about. Big changes to the Outsiders team, so I think it'd be fun to talk about how that initial issue kind of affected both of us and have that on that episode as well, because I think it'll be kind of a meaty discussion. So this will be a quick little two-parter. We'll be back in a few days with part two of this one, but I thought it'd be kind of a fun way to split this episode up and kind of give me a survival tactic and give you guys a 2-hour podcast right now. We are proud members of the Comics Podcast Network and the League of Comic Book Podcasts. Don't forget that our podcast is also being played on GetYourGeekOnRadio.com. GetYourGeekOnRadio.com, making geek chic, and that's kind of a cool way. We actually have a widget right on the website from RagingBullets.com. So you can hear some great music, you can hear some great geek programming, all on GetYourGeekOnRadio.com. So very, very cool, and we're glad to be a part of that. Our sponsors for this episode are DCBService.com and InStockTrades.com. Over at DCBService.com, you can pick up Green Arrow number 31, written by J.T. Cruel with art by Diogenes Neves, with cover by Mauro Casacoli. The fall of Green Arrow begins here. Spinning out of the shocking events of Justice League Cry for Justice and the Justice League Rise and Fall Special number 1 comes the destruction of Green Arrow. As Oliver Queen's inner turmoil and guilt overwhelms him, secrets are revealed that will tear him asunder. What will the Emerald Archer reveal to the world that will change his lives and the lives of the people around him forever? And why are Hal Jordan and Barry Allen and the rest of the Justice League hunting him? I'm really excited about this book. It's $2.99 regularly, 40% off, only $1.79. I'm excited to see some shakeups and changes for Green Arrow. He's a character that has continued to be a favorite of mine, and it's a character that I'm excited to see what's going to be coming up for this character as the year goes on. So that's Oliver Queen, and we're going to be seeing a lot more for him this year. J.T. Cruel won me over with that Blackest Night Titans. I know we've talked about it multiple times on the show, so I'm excited to see how this book is, and that's DCBService.com to pick up that great pre-order special. Episode 199 will be the JLA Avengers trade paperback. Ket Hare, one of our listeners from the show, picked out this In-Stock Trades Rage of the Month. It's going to be JLA Avengers. We're going to be talking about DC, Marvel, Kurt Busiek, George Perez, 208 pages, $19.99 regularly, 47% off, only $10.59. If you don't have this, pick it up. It's going to be great to be able to talk some Marvel on our show as well as DC and talk about some of those great characters. I'm a big fan of Marvel characters, grew up with them my whole life. It's going to be fun to kind of be able to kind of delve into this meatily into the show, so very cool. Thank you, InStockTrades.com, for continuing to support us with those great deals. Don't forget about David Barron's contest. David Barron's a friend of the show and a wonderful colorist for DC. If you follow his blog and his Twitter, which the blog is myzombies.blogspot.com, and his Twitter page is twitter.com/myzombies. If you haven't been following those, make sure to follow them. Following each one gives you 2 entries into the contest. One for the blog, one for the Twitter. David's going to be randomly picking somebody from the blog or the Twitter page to win this month an entire month's worth of DC comps that he gets, which is definitely monthly issues, some trade paperbacks, and possibly even a couple hardcovers. It all depends on what he gets for that month's list, but that's a great deal for somebody just for checking out his blogs. And I encourage you to check out his blog because the blog has wonderful original artwork that David's working on. And he also shows you on a lot of his pieces the stages of development, which is really cool to see for me as a fan because I love that behind the scenes stuff. I'm a big fan of behind the scenes work on DVD releases and things like that. I love when you get a hardcover or trade paperback, seeing those back pages that show that. Cry for Justice, one of my favorite things about Cry for Justice right now are the back pages that kind of give you behind the scenes into the mind of James Robinson. So this kind of stuff is stuff that I eat up. He's doing this on his blog. Definitely check it out. Remember, 2 entries just for applying to those. And that's in the show notes and on the website. You can check out David Baird's blog on Twitter. So very cool, and thank you, David, for including us in that contest. Jim, what kind of a podcast are we?
Well, Sean, we are a spoiler podcast. We go in-depth into plotline, story twists, and whatnot of the comics we're reviewing. So if we're going over something you haven't read, you may want to come back later so you can better enjoy the show.
And without further ado, let's go ahead and jump into some Blackest Night discussion.
Reaching melting point. Not sure we can make it.
All right, I want to welcome back to the show Myron Rumsey from the blog of OA. Myron, thank you for coming back again on to our part 2, which it seems like this is going to be our theme. Every time we do Blackest Night, there's so much going on that we really can't contain it into one episode.
Well, I'm always glad to be here. So, thanks for having me on.
I'm excited for this one because I want to kick off talking about Green Lantern number 49. One of our voicemails, and actually from the forum as well, was talk about John Stewart. The fact that the character's been kind of out of the spotlight. And this was the issue where it was really all John Stewart. And it was a very big issue as far as character... I don't want to say, character development, because it does give us an idea of where he's at now from where he's been in the past, but it also, in many ways, serves as a primer, an origin, It
was like a character introduction, I saw that.
Yeah.
And I thought it made me hungry for more John Stewart stuff.
Same with me.
Yeah, I think this issue really served to redefine who John is as a character. And I think if there's a character out there that deserves a backup feature somewhere, a co-feature, it's John Stewart. I would love to see him have a co-feature in this book.
I'd read him as the lead character.
Yeah.
I'm going to take back what I said, because I said before, I don't know if John... I know, well... it goes back. It goes back to would it sell or not, but more and more... I think with the Green Lantern universe right now, you could probably add a third Green Lantern book and make it work.
Oh yeah, definitely.
I think with the popularity of it, you could.
Yes, I would. It's weird because I'm saying yes, but then in the back of my mind, I am thinking there is a lot of burnout happening.
Is it too much?
Yeah, and I've seen a couple different other sources where I've seen multiple people say, "Hey, this is too much. It's a good story, but it's too much for me."
What's too much? Blackest Night?
Yeah, the whole Blackest Night
really?
event. Yeah, and it's people are. It's just. And I've seen it in a couple different spots. And I saw, I can't think of someone on our forum, and I'm drawing a blank who said it. But then also on a couple of the DC stuff and just some various other spots, I've seen people say it's with the multi-universe crossover, with all the different event tie-ins, with all the miniseries, and all this stuff is just so much Green Lantern. They want to just settle down and let's just get some Green Lantern, just some stories and all that kind of deal.
I can get that to a certain extent in the sense that I would think people... See, it is kind of hard. Traditionally, when you think of a crossover, you think that you have to read everything with the banner. So I get that. And I mean, we've got a collector's mentality. Honestly, I say on the show that, you can pull back and do that, but I have a collector's mentality myself, so I get it. I really do. I like to have all of the issues with the banner on it and read all of that. I mean, it's part of the reason why I am reading the tie-ins. But I do like that with this one, you can choose to pull back if you'd like to. I think it's hard for us as collectors to do that, and I think it's something where you just need to determine, how much Green Lantern do you want, and just read that much. I mean, that's kind of the reality of it, and I think it's hard for us as collectors to do that, but I think one of the things with this hobby that is hard to do as fans, and I think we all run into this at one time or another, is finding a pull list, or finding a certain amount of books that you're pulling that are kind of balanced and meeting your needs, where you're getting that sense of, I'm building this collection that fits what my goals are for a collection, but yet at the same time getting the enjoyment that matches the collecting them. And that is something that I think is a hard balance for us as fans when you want it all of a certain thing, and you sometimes sacrifice variety, if that makes sense.
Mm-hmm.
We're
especially
pulling,
when the quality is so high like it is right now. There's so much. You look at every corner of the DC universe, and it's all great stuff. How do you choose?
Well, I think it's harder for the fan, too, that maybe I've got an intense... I'm pulling the entire DC Universe line, but I'm pulling things outside of that's not published by DC as well because of that balance. But for somebody who has, a pull list that's, let's say, a half or a quarter of what I'm pulling right now, if they're pulling all Blackest Night, they might be saying, well, I want to read some other stuff. I want to kind of get some more variety and all that. It's all this event. I could see where that might be burning them out in the sense that you want to read. Like, I read Jonah Hex last night, and I've talked about this book on the show multiple times. I loved it. It was done in one, issue number 51. It's this Divining Rod one, and it was, story of revenge and mystery and intrigue in this town. I mean, it'll fit the Old West Jonah Hex. And completely different from anything I'm reading in any of this, other than, arguably weird Western tales, but, it was just a great done-in-one story that didn't tie into anything, and I like that. It's refreshing. It's different. And I need that. So I could see where the burnout would be there if you're only reading the event. I got the burnout when I read way back when, and I liked the event, Secret Wars 2. And some people, I know that gets kind of mixed reviews, but during the time, I was a kid, the Beyonder, and it was touching on the entire Marvel Universe and all that. I really liked the event. The only reason why I had that burnout was I wanted to read X-Men stories that were not locked into all that as well. And it wasn't an X-Men event, but it was a Marvel Universe event, but I was kind of like sitting here, I'm like, well, this is kind of slowing down a little bit of my reading in there. So I get that vibe, but I had fun with the event.
It's funny you mentioned Secret Wars 2, because for me, when I read Secret Wars 2, it almost drove me away from comics. I got so angry.
Really?
Yeah, I really did not like Secret Wars 2. I so enjoyed 1 that when 2 came out, I'm like, yeah, this is going to be awesome. This stink. And I was one of those angry, fanboys who just like, I'm done. And it almost completely drove me away from comics just because the outcome and just everything. It was like a couple other the story elements, and I'm like,
See, I liked that because it was the Beyonder as kind of, I don't want to say, it's kind of weird to call him the everyman, but he really was our eyes into the Marvel characters. So I got into seeing him exploring the different facets of the Marvel Universe. And in fairness to the event, I ended up, after that event, reading a couple of different Marvel books that I'd never read before because I picked them up due to the crossover, and I got into them. Mm-hmm. So it did serve that purpose, but it didn't. That's funny how we had such a different... So, I mean, could there be people that have that from, events such as this? I don't know. It's interesting. Such a different experience with an event. Because you actually didn't like it. I did.
Yeah.
So... that's kind of funny. Anyway, back to DC. It does. When we talk about events, it does make an interesting point, though, to talk about what is it about event that we like. Have you guys at all felt that this was too much for you? Either of you?
I didn't. I didn't feel compelled to buy the one shots unless it was a set of characters I was interested in. But no, I don't. But then again, I haven't been buying a lot of the events either. I mean, I bought Infinite Crisis and Final Crisis and those things, but I never bought all the tie-ins, so I guess I don't really feel burned out by it.
Yeah, I'm absolutely so into this that it's not even a hesitation on the one-shots, and there are titles here that I've never, on some of these one-shots, I've never read the series, but I still jumped right into getting the one-shot, didn't even think twice about it, and it wasn't even, because, I'm not even going to say, I know it wasn't even my collector's mentality or the show that drove me. I literally wanted to pull as much information on this event. I'm so into it that I was like, okay, yes, I want this. And, I no regret whatsoever in purchasing. I'm thinking, the collector in me is now thinking, I hope they do this all on a hardcover, absolute volumes, and I'm just thinking that way. But, it's weird with me and a lot of stuff. There has been some stuff that I have picked up because of the show, and there's been some stuff that I continued with because of the collector mentality. And this is definitely not one of those type of things. This is something that, I can honestly and truthfully say that I'm really drawn to the story. I like the fact that in each of these little tie-ins, there's sometimes just a little bit of information you didn't know, or maybe a refresher on something, or just a different take on characters dealing with the undead.
It's funny, when we talk about that, I think one of the reasons why I'm not getting burnt out for it, and I get the vibe when they were saying they wanted to get back to, I think if you're only a Green Lantern reader, it may be that you're like, instead of, a big event, I would really like single title storylines, story arcs to come back. Because there's been a lot of leading up to this and building up to this, where it's been, that's what's been going on in the Green Lantern. I've loved that. The build's been great. I think it's great. But I'm getting that from, like, Wonder Woman, for example. Great title where it's just Wonder Woman. And she's got her own events going on, her own storyline going on. Power Girl, same thing. Her own storyline, her own events going on. It's not tying into everything. JSA, great example of another book that I'm reading where it's not tying into this. There's a mini, but the actual JSA book proper has its own arcs and stories that's going on. So I think I'm getting that balance there, where this huge event, this epic event, I'm still getting in other books those kind of contained, ongoing, character-driven stories. It'll be interesting to see what happens with Green Lantern out of this, because we're going into that Brightest Day after this, which is interesting. What do you guys think? Myron, we didn't have a chance to talk to you about this. Brightest Day, bi-weekly miniseries that's going to be going on, introducing the world. Basically, it looks like it's for Green Lantern and for Flash, what the DC Universe looks like for them beyond this. I'm sure it's DC Universe proper in general, but the focus looks like it's going to be those titles. How do you feel about that? Are you excited about that?
I'm excited about it. I think one of the things that I read that Jeff Johns talked about was that Mira was going to be one of the stars of the book, and so was the Atom. So I kind of think it's going to be almost here's the DCU post Blackest Night and how it works. I don't know as if it's necessarily, despite the title, going to be a Green Lantern book.
That's a good point, because I didn't realize that Mira and the Atom were going to be so. Actually, I'm even more excited for it now that you mentioned. Second, you mentioned Mira.
Yeah, I was like, sweet.
Yeah, woohoo! That's great. So, I mean, I wonder if, it's kind of my hope. I wonder if this will lead to an Aquaman something happening after this. Because they do get a lot of requests at conventions for him. He is a tough character, and I do get why it's hard for DC to come up with an Aquaman title. He's been a hard character to find out what are the fans looking for in Aquaman. Because I love the old hook-hand, long-haired Aquaman, Peter David's run. That was fabulous for me. That's my favorite Aquaman run. But that's not universally everyone's favorite. There's different people like different things. I liked Rick Veitch's after that, and then, where that all went, I thought it was great. Will Pfeiffer then took over the book. I enjoyed it. I even liked the fantasy, the newer one that they came up with. I liked the fantasy elements of that. But he seems to have problems with getting that book that'll give a big attach rate to him. So I'm curious. I'd love to see if this leads to, or a Mira book. To me, I'm going back to that. Like Brightest Day having Mira as a focus along with Atom. I'm excited for that.
Yeah, that's I hadn't heard that. That's definitely I'd say good news.
More interested in Mira or Ray Palmer?
Mira.
Definitely Mira.
Yeah, and I'm not even saying that to knock Ray Palmer, because Ray, it's funny because I've said multiple times I'm a Ryan Choi guy, but as this is going on, Ray is getting interesting to me, but Mira really just, I don't know, I'm clicking with her, and I want to see, I think part of it is because I never really had a connection to Aquaman. I never really read the stories that had Aquaman in them. Except we had the Titan Time that we did 4 years ago,
and Mira wasn't a focus,
and she wasn't in there. I don't think she was in it, And I think that is the only time I ever read a story with him in it, other than that couple panels from Superman for Tomorrow.
She was in Titan Time, but it was like a cameo when they showed him with his family and all that in part of the book. I take it back. She was in there, but she wasn't like a featured character where there was any development with her. You just saw that he was married and that was his wife Mira, and that was kind of it. Very interesting character. Like her out of this, it's probably one of my top choices of solo series I would love to see out of this is Mira. I would love to see Mira in a book. I'm it's funny. I'm an Aquaman fan, and I'm even saying Mira more. So I keep going back to that. Anyway, John Stewart. Let's talk about John Stewart, because I'm looking at this wonderful cover. I was so anxious to see this, because it's been teased through multiple issues that we're finally going to deal with some of his past demons. I think one of the things that I liked about this is we got to see, it wasn't so much as John getting past them as we've seen John is already past them. He spent years getting past them, and I liked this because it painted him in a different light than some of the other characters we've seen in Blackest Night as a veteran. And in some ways, it just kind of showed that there comes a point in time where you've got to face things. You've got to come to terms with them. You've got to understand what your capabilities were, as far as handling those events and how to get past them. This is tragic. A whole world was destroyed. But he's come to terms with that now. He understands what his actual role was and that he's not responsible for it being destroyed. The only thing he's responsible for is he just failed in his mission. And that's a hard thing to come to terms with when people's lives were on the line. And I like that. This cover, though, really sharp by Ed Benes. It's funny, I'm looking at his artwork in a completely different way now because he's going to be doing Birds of Prey. So I'm like sitting there, I'm like, yes.
Okay, yeah, this is going to be good. Okay.
Yeah, I'm happy because that's a book I'm very concerned about. But a nice gory cover here.
It's one of those beautifully gory covers kind of deals.
This is an important issue too, not just because of the story in the front, but the story in the back, because we get some real reveals on what the origins of the DC Universe proper is and how it plays into the whole Big Bang Theory. So that's going to be fun to talk about as we get into the backup feature as well. Now,
I think this whole issue was kind of designed to show us that John has moved past that whole Xanshi mistake, and I think John's has made comments that he thinks it's time to kind of close those doors and move forward. And apparently John is going to be playing a major role post Blackest Night in the Green Lantern title in the first storyline. So I think this was as much to give us a redefinition of John, but as well as to tell us that, this is time to move past that. It's time to step into the future.
And I'm glad to see that because it's, he's been stuck kind of in a rut, and then they'll do a little pop with him, and then he just kind of disappears back in the background. And now I really want to see this character get more of a fire to it. And I'm hoping that we're going to get more, and we're going to see some more stuff out of him, and be kind of neat. But the thing I really digged was this whole thing with that Dirk guy, the Dirk,
D-R-I-Q?
Yeah, Dirk.
How do you get Dirk out of that? You're putting the I before the R.
Well, okay, it's a little dyslexic. Okay, hey,
Every time you say Dirk, I'm thinking of like Dirk. You ever play Dragon's Lair with Dirk the Daring? Like, say, really? I mean, I don't know that he's that far off, but
now I'm assuming his story is an actual thing that had happened in the past issues and all that kind of stuff. That it actually happened with him dying but not dying, and then the kind of summary that they put here was a good summary of what happened to him. Basically, his ring wouldn't let his soul or his essence leave, so he the ring kind of trapped his soul with his decomposing body and keep them both linked together.
What's kind of cool about this, the amount of research that had to have gone into. Either you got to just have an intense recall of Green Lantern stories, or you had to have done. I think it's a combination of A and B. It just shows the love and care of the history of these characters, because you're pulling Dreek from out of the woodwork and kind of dusting him off and saying, "Hey, this is this cool thing that happened to him in past storytelling that we can bring into today, make people aware that this actually happened, and tie it into because it did tie into Kat Matui, and make this interesting because I love he's." Sentient. He knows. He's able to talk to John, and he's trying to help him, even though he's like this composite Black Lantern.
He's a little bit of column A, a little bit of column B, kind of deal. Now, the thing that I really liked about this is one, I had no idea who this dude was, but we had a quick little boom hit. Here he is. Here's what it is. Let's connect another past story to the present day Blackest Night stuff, and say here's why his ring held him. It really wasn't him. It was more of Necron's doing with the dead thing, kind of act as another gateway or tool for Necron. But I thought that was cool because it was this boom, quick thing, so I'm up to speed. Longtime readers who know the backstory either got a refresher to it, oh yeah, I remember that, or just a repeat, oh okay, yeah. But it wasn't so much that it would bore longtime readers, but it would bring anybody who had absolutely no clue whatsoever, here's the deal, go for it. And because normally with some of the stuff, with some of these past stuff, I'm jumping on Wikipedia going, okay, who is this person? I didn't feel like I had to with him. I had a good grasp on who he was in one quick page.
Did you take it with Dreek, and this is for both of you, because you mentioned that Necron had something to do with what happened to him with the ring. Because they referenced an error in the ring earlier on, that an apparent error in the ring kept him alive. And they never really state that Necron was responsible for that. Did you take it that Necron is responsible? Because I took it as it was the ring that kept him alive, and that was the reason why there was that division. And that his ring is that the error in the ring is still in place; it's still active, and so when the Black Lantern took over, he's got half of his body that's fighting one way for Necron, and the other half that's still got that glitch working in its favor. How did you guys take that?
I initially took it as it was a Necron doing, which way back when is what this is like. This is why it happened. Boom. But you're mentioning it, then the whole split body thing. Yeah, that could be. That could still be the case. It's still an unknown why it happened.
Yeah, I kind of took it as it was just whatever caused the ring to keep him alive or semi-alive in the first place is just kind of creating this hybrid situation.
He really is like, because the composite Batman Superman.
Yeah.
This is the composite Black Lantern. I kind of like it. It makes a lot of sense. It's a good story. John's inner dialogue here, and this is what an opening. This double page spread where you see all this going on, but you get right away what is he thinking, and that's always interesting to me. I'm the last one to laugh with Hal in the face of danger. I don't seek the attention Guy does, and I don't know how to put my heart out there like Kyle. I used to be called the angry Green Lantern. Now they call me stoic. They're both basically right. Sometimes Hal thinks I take this too seriously. Damn right I do. Who am I? I'm the soldier with the chip on his shoulder, and that's bad news for the bad guys. That moment was really great because it does show in just one batch of inner dialogue comparisons to the other characters, why he's different, and why we should care. And this is where an event like this works and why you need tie-ins or other books to spotlight other characters, because this is a great shot for us to see in the massive event that's going on, character-driven stories that show us something more about this character than we knew before. Like, you walk out of right in those 2 pages right there, I'm like, oh, I want to know more about him. And I like that. That's very well written. As it keeps going on, we take a look at John. He's taking the battery, and I'm like, what is he going to do with that? Because he's like, okay, I have this battery. I didn't see him suiting up and actually using the battery as a weapon.
Yeah, I really digged that he does slip in. As he goes into soldier mode, he does. His old uniform does reappear in the green form. It makes sense. He's putting on a different mindset. He's becoming a different, in a way, a different person. Back to who he was before. So, you think about it, just subconsciously, the ring would generate it, even if he doesn't intentionally generate the look.
Do you take it he's becoming who he was before, though, or is this letting us know that he's always been the soldier? Like, that's always been a part of him? Because I think that when he's talking about, I'm the soldier with the chip on my shoulder, I think he's kind of, at this point, maybe not who he's always been, but I think what we've seen in this issue is that he has reconciled himself with his entire life, so that's all a part of him now. He's not shoving any of it aside. He's bringing it all in, bringing it out to the forefront. Nothing is hidden. There's no layers of him, like deep, dark secrets or anything anymore with John Stewart. John's faced his demons. In many ways, he's a hero's hero because of that. He doesn't have that Achilles heel emotionally anymore. He's really well-rounded and balanced. I don't know. It was interesting to kind of see where this story went with him. He's a lot more heroic than I think we've seen out of a lot of people lately, and I think it's cool.
Well, I think it's kind of neat that they took this Marine background, which wasn't really in the comics before. That came about a lot through the JLU cartoon, and they kind of grafted that onto John's history. So I think here, they're really trying to bring that to the forefront and make sure that people who maybe didn't know a lot of that history really gets that exposure all in one fell swoop. This really boils John down to his essence. You find out through this issue, if you didn't know who John Stewart was before, you certainly do know who he is by the time this issue is over.
Yeah, and it's funny because just thinking about, John Stewart, before I always thought of him as just this architect. So he's got the very meticulous nature in just who he is. And then you find out he was a Marine sniper. Well, that kind of adds to that same meticulous kind of nature, that very just rigid, definite, boom, boom, boom kind of mental discipline. Goes right on. Those two are kind of the two things that go hand in hand. So seeing just him in his battle dress uniform, going back to the olden days, he's got the rifle and he's got his sniper rifle, and just seeing this kind of just flesh out. I don't want to. I said go back to his old ways, but it's not even. It is part of who he is now. It's that same mental discipline that he had back then. It's the mental discipline he had when he became the architect, the mental discipline that he has as a Green Lantern. It's all these things meshed into one, but it's that, I think it was more of I do think it was like a subconscious reaction. You think about when Clark, back in Up and Away, put on that Green Lantern ring, and went up. He didn't become a Green Lantern, version of the Superman costume. He was still Clark Kent, with the green ring, and even Lois caught him on it, saying subconsciously, you are Clark Kent. You're not thinking of yourself as Superman, or you would have generated that costume. I think part of that was the same deal that we saw with John there, where he's getting back. You get back in the groove. You're throwing down. This is it, and boom, that's what generated. That's why I say by going back to his
meaning
old
he's
life.
come to terms with his past self and he's utilizing it.
Exactly. We're in agreement here. I'm just wording it differently, and I could keep my mouth shut now.
I'm so teasing you.
Making John a sniper is kind of an interesting choice because that really wasn't alluded to before, other than in the books. The making him a sniper is kind of a great touch because, and I don't know a lot about the military, but I would think that a sniper has to be somewhat more emotionally detached, just because a sniper is the person who's seen close up the results of their handiwork, and they're going to see exactly what happens as the result of their actions. So they almost have to detach themselves a little bit, I would think.
It's also more directed. Like, if you're in infantry, in the grunts, right in there, a lot of times it's not as targeted onto one specific person. You're not identifying specific people, if that makes sense. I'm not saying to make light of it or anything like that. I think with a sniper, you are specifically looking at a person as you are pulling the trigger.
And you're seeing the results of what happens when you pull the trigger.
So, I mean, I would imagine, I couldn't imagine for myself, and this is my respect for military people, picking up a gun and being able to shoot anybody, whether I'm targeting them directly or all that. But you're right. I would think that the emotional detachment, there's got to be emotional attachment, I think, in both cases. But you're right, even more so, I would imagine, for a sniper.
And maybe it's not so much detachment as it is emotional management.
It's a lot of discipline as well. You're doing, it's the, and it's even hard to describe it, and because I've never been one, but I've seen enough on it and studied enough on it to know I lack the discipline to be a sniper. I know flat out I would never have been able to make it, never had any aspirations to even try anything like that, because I know my limits. These are guys who are the best of the best. You have your top rating. It's not just about being able to shoot somebody accurately. Gun manage. The gun. Shooting. That's just part of one small part of it, and they can actually, within the training, teach someone how to be a better shot. It's about the mindset of moving 1 inch at a time, because you can't give away your position. It's about adjusting as you're going, adjusting your cover and your cover and concealment to match your surroundings. You went from one where you went from high grass to more of a woodland thing in its span. And as you're doing it, you got to change your camouflage to match it. You got to pick your target. You're waiting for who knows how long, and sometimes it's just observation. Sometimes it's target. Sometimes it's multiple. You're engaging multiple threats. There's a lot of mixture to go along to becoming a sniper. It's one of those, Marine sniper. It's one of those things that people say, dang. It's, something that earns, people who don't give out respect quickly, give it out just when you hear what the person is.
Any of it's impressive to me. Anybody who's in the military is impressive to me, because it's not a route that I've ever gone myself. So I'm always impressed when people will do things that, wasn't my calling, wasn't something, and I'm like, wow, okay, that's a lot military's a lot to undertake for anybody. So, and then to take it one step further with the sniper end of it, I think is, all of it's impressive. And I love when it's so well written like this, because it does, for me, as a layman that's never been in that, it makes me respect people in the military even more, no matter what level, or what, position that they have in the military, just because of elements like that. It's very cool. So, I like the bits that, as he's being talked to by Dreek, or Drick, or whatever, however you want to pronounce Dirk,
Dirk Diggler.
Dirk Diggler.
Wow. Dreek. Definitely going back to Dreek.
This has now become the boogiest night.
Dreek.
Oh. Hold on. You get the that one.
Wow.
Outstanding.
I give you two a room. And you can do your Boogie Nights, whatever you want.
I was trying to come up with a good Boogie Nights reference. I was trying to remember what that song he sung. And I was going to sing that, and I'm like,
Thank goodness for small blessings.
I couldn't remember it. I was drawing a blank.
But when he's talking to John, I like that he's pleading here to keep trying to find new things. There's thousands of them. They keep coming. That would be a nightmare because now Dreek, I'm assuming, was officially dead at this point. Am I right, Myron?
Yeah, he was kind of an undead Green Lantern back during the Emerald Twilight period. Mm-hmm. But when Hal went into the battery during Emerald Twilight and absorbed all that power, all those rings were depowered. So Dreek was considered dead at that point.
So then in this rising, an interesting side effect would have been that Dreek then was brought back to life, and the ring glitch kicked back in again with his return to life. So it's an interesting little twist. I didn't expect that this is the hand that was looking on to John Stewart. I thought it was Katmatui.
Yeah, I thought it was Katmatui as well. And then when I saw it was Dreek, I was like, I slapped myself on the head thinking, why didn't I think of that?
But I think that's great because I think it's something for fans that have read it, such as yourself, and then for fans like us who didn't read that originally, it's very cool to add this history element. That's where I love continuity. I didn't read any of that, but I'm just as into it because it happened historically. I think that's very cool. So this poor guy wakes up to a living nightmare where he was dead, at quote-unquote, at peace, and now he's been brought back by this so-called agent of peace, Necron, into this living nightmare of, please end this. Stop these people, John. But then Katmatui shows up and says he doesn't belong to them, Dreek. Meaning that, and she's going after the heartstrings, meaning he belongs to me. And I love how they scramble to try and find different things to attach to. Because the first thing is that, you were my first love, you're the first one I made love to. I wish I had been your first. And going for sympathy, going for guilt, going for
the connection.
Yeah, anything, trying to see what'll stick. And when that's not working, going back to the fears. We exchanged fears, things we never told each other. Now, this explains right here why this is pulled into continuity now, because John never told anybody. This was something he kept to himself. Now, here's a question for you guys. I've mentioned on the show many times, I'm not an artist. It's interesting. I noticed there's two inkers on this one. Ed Bennis does his own inks, and then there's Luciana Del Negro. I don't know, the pronunciation, and apologize for that, but I'm guessing here. I love this. First of all, props to the colors throughout the book because the shift in the past here. Do you think this is where the inking shift is in the past sequence as well?
That was my guess.
Because if it's not, I commendations to whoever did the artwork on all of this. But the inks here were very cool to see. If they did do the different inker here, it was a good choice because I loved the distinction. The whole book looked fantastic. I like the distinction between the two sequences, and it was a good choice if that's what they did and why, to kind of do John's past with a different look. That it took us out of time, which I really needed right there.
And it takes you out of time, but it didn't boggle my mind. I wasn't thrown off by it. It didn't throw me. It didn't throw me out of the story or anything.
No.
It was one of those things where a different look for this dream sequencing or for the backlog or however you want to word this.
The memory.
Yeah, the memory. This was a good usage of a different kind of art. Not even art style, but more of an art style as compared to a different artist.
To go back for a burning helicopter for a friend, that to me, I want to believe I could do this. And I don't think no matter what you say, I don't think you will ever know how you will handle this type of situation unless you're actually in it. I want to believe I would do this though, because my friends mean enough to me that I think emotionally I would do it, but I don't know. To actually be in that moment and actually take those steps, you don't ever know. That, would you take that step? Would you go and do that? I would hope that I would do this. I think it's cool, though, because to arrive there and find out that everything was taken from him, you've taken this step in the middle of this firefight. in the middle of, seeing helicopters crash. You're going into the danger zone. Basically, the odds are pretty good you could die doing this. And to find out that the person had been stripped, their dignity taken away, all that stuff, and they're being paraded like a trophy across the street, what would that do to you mentally? You already now have done this crazy act. Because it is, what he was doing, it's borderline suicidal. And I think that's heroic, but it is that too. So you're already in that mental state. Now to snap one step further at that point, because it makes sense then at this point. The sniper's like, I'm going to react. And I'm going to take them out, get away from him. He's dead. The guy's dead at this point. But now it's about your friend being degraded. You're disrespected. And that was something for me I was eating up because I'm like, wow, what an emotional moment that I think anybody, no matter who you are as a hero, no matter who you are as a person, could go through. Because he really was, at that point, making a sacrifice of himself to try and get his friend's, hopefully live body out of there. To find him dead, but then this step further, what would you do?
Yeah, and I tell you, 100%, Sean, I can tell you, you would go in after some of your friends. I know you well enough to know you're sitting there and you're thinking with your head. You would just react. And I've seen you just react sometimes, and it wasn't even this extreme of a measure. I can honestly say you would go in there, and it would be one of those reaction things. Now, once you got in there, you would say, oh, it's just Jim. Screw it. I'm getting out of here. But, your initial reaction would be to run into the fire. That's just, you've got a passion about you with your friends, with your family. That's something that... there's no doubt you would do that. But
I think it's a realistic thing that I think it's very easy for people to say, oh, yeah, I would do that and all that. You don't know until you're in this. And as far as would I take it to the level that John did, how would I react if I saw this?
Yeah. That
to me is interesting because you got to look in your own head and say, I don't know. I really don't know, faced with this, if I would have done things any different than John. Maybe I would have handled it worse. Because John didn't handle this well. He kind of snapped here. But... Can you blame him?
Depends on your definition.
Can you blame him?
Handling it well.
Can you blame him? You know what? I actually take that back. You're right. Depending on your perspective, you might be sitting here saying, "Well, that's exactly what he should have done." Yeah. And I don't know. It's kind of
and this is taken heavily from the story Black Hawk Down. Where in Somalia, we had the helicopter go down, and basically it was a ranger unit was. A little bit of trouble, and they had the option of leaving, and abandoning, wounded and injured, or trying for, send people to get up, and they didn't. They hunkered down, and it was just one of those amazing kind of, stories of, knuckle up and fight, and you lose a lot of lives, some guys make it, and it was just one of those kind of, gripping, stories, book, movies, various, do the research, you'll see it's just one of those kind of things. And when I was reading this, that was immediately first thought that popped in my head. And it was just a cool, this wasn't directly page for page exactly how it happened, but it was enough of a nod to it that, you can say, that it was an inspiration, if you will, or, just an homage to a kind of deal. And I thought that, for me, was a really cool thing, because they kept with that same fire, that same, anger. Because that was something that really, got the soldiers who were going through that was the exact stuff where they were stripping down the U.S. soldiers, dragging the dead bodies behind cars. And it was one of those things where we're not surrendering. There's no way we're going to let them, they want us, they're going to have to kill us. We're not giving them anything. And it's that kind of just mindset where he just goes. And, the whole deal with him just dropping the people. And, it's, death and, killing is a bad thing. But this was the Marine. This was the soldier. This was, what he does. And it was, we talked earlier about just discipline of a sniper. If you're so angry, you're so enraged, your hands naturally shake. You get that natural thing. And the worst thing when you're firing a weapon is if your hands are shaking.
Sure.
And especially if you're dealing, with the sniper. He's doing headshots. Now, headshots are not easy. If you can do them in a video game, don't think, oh, that's great. No. The body is actually your best target to fire on because there's more mass to it. Well, John's just dropping headshots, and he's not even just, sitting there supported, position. These are open-handed, freehand he's firing, which, again, you add to the whole degree of difficulty, and it just, kind of just really shows, one, just his focus, even at this point in time. This wasn't a post-Green Lantern training. This was who John Stewart is. He is a disciplined fighter.
Your video game comparison is an interesting one because that's an interesting point too. Let's say the video game provided the same, because a lot of the video games do where you've got to keep it steady and you've got to manipulate the controller in such a way. But you talk about detachment earlier, and this is part of the problem. We actually see here that John did detach himself during this. In a video game, it's easy to detach yourself because they're not real. Yeah. But then when you're dealing with an actual living, breathing person who's moving, it's a different kind of detachment. You've got to really be able to that point almost disconnect yourself from them in order to do that. It'd be interesting to see. I can imagine it's not the same for every sniper in the sense what they have to do to deal with this. Because I'm sure not all of them have to detach. They come up with different ways how to deal with it. I'm sure it's as diverse as any other profession as far as how you come to terms with what your method is to be effective in that position. And I find that kind of stuff interesting as an outsider looking in to see that, and my respect level goes up for what that must be like. This moment with him, though, where we see that he wasn't just afraid of dying, he was afraid of dying there with unfamiliar faces, on foreign soil. It's almost like, his reaction to what was going on with his friend was even more... was even scarier or creepier to him because of what if it was me and that was happening? Because that's so much what he doesn't want for himself. He wants to be buried and honored and know that. I think we find comfort. I think it's why people make plans for their death so specific a lot of times, because for a lot of people that's something that's important. It's not something I haven't. It's funny. It's my age. I haven't really thought about it. As far as what I want for my own death, but obviously John has come to the point where he realizes what he doesn't want, at least. And that would be something I think in the military you have to think about it, because you are I haven't been in life or death situations. They are. So to be in those situations, to have to think about what your death is going to be like, it was foreign to me too, and that was something that I thought was interesting that I connected with here. To say that, geez, I've never faced something like that, where I've had to really think about my death, is for real, and what that would be like. And that was something I thought was engaging about this sequence. Because, do either of you guys know what you want for yourself, or is it something that you've even considered? Because that was something I liked about this that I thought was interesting.
Yes, actually, I have thought about it, and the joke answer is, of course, I want to be stuffed and mounted with a Black Lantern ring on my on one hand and a Green Lantern ring on the other, just in case. But the truth is, I cremated. Just fry me. Then if someone wants to hold on to the ashes, they can, or if they want to scatter them somewhere, they can. And I'd say Vegas if you're going to scatter me anywhere, but So
see people walking down the street and Jim lands on them.
Yeah.
What is this dust?
Yeah. So
I like the whole fry you thing too. The way you said that, I'm like imagining you in a hibachi.
I literally, it's once you're dead, for me it's the soul moves on. It's just the shell there. It's now the everything post death is for the people who are still alive. It's the memorial. It's the moving on.
Why do you want to be cremated though?
Because I don't feel like being. They don't. One, I know how much cemeteries, cremation, cemeteries, the funeral and all the casket, how much they gouge on extra pricing. So I'm like, I don't want my family to go through that extra cost. But two, you bury me in the ground, what are you going to do? Come visit, the body? There's nothing there. It is literally an empty shell now. So
But if you're
save my family and friends the headache and hassle of having to go to a funeral. You don't have to go to a cemetery to visit me. You want to visit me, go hit the Vegas Strip, walk up and down the Strip. That's more like you'll be visiting me.
But if we keep you in an urn, we can pass you around.
You could do that as well if you feel like it. Hey, decorated urn, maybe put the DC logo on one side, cool action, I don't know.
They could take you to conventions and you could get your pictures taken with different creators.
Hey, would you mind holding this urn of my dead friend's ashes so I can take a picture with you?
He always wanted to meet you. But this is your first U.S. appearance.
Dude, I'd be up there going. I hope I'd be up there, looking down, going, yeah, all right, cool. I just disgusted another creator. Woohoo!
Wow. What about you, Myron? Have you ever thought of it?
I really haven't thought of it. It's funny because I've had a number of really close calls, but in those moments, I always have found myself trying to figure out how to get out of the situation.
Yeah.
So I've never really thought about afterwards. I mean, now that I'm married and have a family and whatnot, I've thought about what's going to happen when, and I'm kind of in Jim's boat. I'd rather be cremated and have people want to remember me, put a picture on their wall.
Yeah, I mean, medically, I've had to think about it like this past year, but I mean, not close enough that I really actually, got to the point where I would actually consider it. But I've never really had to think about that. It's interesting to talk. Yeah, I don't have this. I don't have. It was funny when you were talking about the convenience for family as far as expense and things like that of cremation. It was interesting to see what your focus was, Jim, on that. John's case, I love that. I guess it made me connect with the military person even more, that they actually have to, on a day-to-day basis, worry about the fact that they aren't going to come back when they go out in the field. And it's a harsh reality of it. I'm like, I've never had to experience that. Not like this, where you're walking into something like that. It was cool. Now, we're back to Kat Matui, who's using this in his words, and just will, all over the place. I loved that. It's him coming back and saying, a black ring did what you couldn't. It resurrected the planet you killed. Because he did try to do that. And I remember reading that, where he tried to bring the planet back. He was trying so hard to do that one thing. You're throwing my own words against me, but I'm wrong. I didn't kill anyone. I failed to save them. After you, after Zhanshi, after the things I've seen and done in the name of war on Earth and in space, I should already know that I can't save everyone, and it's about time I accepted that. It's time to move on. And you see him just lashing out with the green beam. And it was interesting to see at this point, and move out. Yeah. This double page here was just breathtaking. Again, it's his past, that pivotal event from his past that he's come to terms with that so connects with what happened on Zhanshi. And just him saying, I'm going to accept who I am. I'm going to bring all of what I am into this moment. And, you brought this memory up to the forefront. That's fine. Let's use that baby right here. Just a beautiful, gorgeous double page. This is another example of one where, I want this. I want it on the wall.
I want that on my wall. Agreed. Yeah. God, big time.
Well, I was just going to say, that's definitely a poster. And if there was any nagging doubts with John and dealing with that whole event in his past, that's the turning point for him right there.
Oh, yeah, big time. And I did like that. It's time to move on and move out. Kind of like this, the whole military command, move out, hit them hard, and just as he's saying that, you see his old unit there, or just soldiers or whoever that exactly is, ready to, lock and loaded, ready to rock and roll. And I thought that, for me, was just the whole cool seeing him in, ready to go mode. This was time to throw down. This was knuckle up time, gut check time, hoorah, semper fi, whatever you're going to say, you got to say. It's that emotional response that, I got from that page, and just that whole battle, that whole inner dialogue sequencing, it was a build up. Then as you flip the page, boom, you're hit with that double page spread. That, for me, was some great, just not only story, art, but layout and planning. To do it that way where it just flows right into that, boom, and drop it in. I thought that was something I was like, dang, this is cool. I caught myself the first time reading it, going back and rereading that sequence, just because I liked it so much, I wanted it again. I was like, hurrah!
I love that his analysis of the battlefield. I like the way the ring manifests itself personally to each person. I've always liked that about the Green Lantern rings, especially as the years have gone on. We've seen that more personific. It's something that like connects with that person, and their constructs all come from who they are as a person. But in this case, on the battlefield, he's analyzing it, trying to bring these guys on, and the little boy coming up there, that's where he realizes that, like, hey, wait a minute. Because this isn't working, now the boy comes in. The detached analysis, where, yeah, he cares about it, but he's got control. And that's the key here. He's maintained emotional control throughout this whole war that he's in the middle of. Which, that goes back to what you're saying, Jim, emotions in check. Controlling those emotions in this moment. Not so much detachment as far as control.
It's discipline. It's
and
mental.
I keep saying detachment, but you're right. Discipline is a key factor here because he's not detached because he says he does care.
Yeah.
And I like that because he's sitting here saying, this is pointless. This is a waste of time. It's some kind of game. They're trying to distract me. They're trying to emotionally get at me and all that. He realizes, you're right, I can't win this. It's time I leave. He's going to get a real core.
Yeah.
Realizing that these constructs that I'm making aren't going to help me right now. I need to get the band together, and we need to do something. And that's when John realizes for the first time that, oh my gosh, look what's going on.
Yeah, this is huge. And I love the fact that, it's the veteran, he's throwing out there, to anyone who can hear me, we've got incoming. Just, once again, communication has been a key. Plus, it's a nice connection where this appears in the Blackest Night saga. We all want that timeline. We all want to know, okay, when did this occur? Well, we now know because we've seen this panel, a very similar panel to this in the Blackest Night series. So now we see, okay, this fits in right here. Cool connection. And I kind of, ate it up just on the whole, my mindset of calling for backup always and just that kind of style and format and whatnot. But this was just also another just cool, nice little connecting thread.
It blends nicely into the issue as well. You know what? For me, the blurb for the next issue is so powerfully intriguing for me. I read Hal Jordan as the Spectre and loved it. When I think of Black Lantern Spectre, not only am I thinking about how the fact that the obviously that Necron has corrupted the Spectre to some level, but I have to wonder how much of the history with the Spectre with the Green Lanterns, because of Hal Jordan being the Spectre at some point, is going to play into this as well. There's a rich history to pull off of there. And is there something more to Hal being the Spectre in the past now that is going to be brought into continuity? Was that an accident that he was the Spectre, or did Necron have a hand in that, or was it the Light fighting against Necron back then, or it's interesting to see I'm curious to see with the Spectre how deep that is going to go.
Yeah, because they've kind of danced around that a little bit. A couple times when they've asked Hal what it was like, he'll just say, I don't really remember much of anything during that time period. But since Rebirth, they really haven't touched on it. So it's interesting to see, is this going to get fleshed out more? Was there more to it than we thought?
I just think I find that whole thing interesting now. And I commend Johns for bringing in so much history of the DC Universe and not overdoing it. I think that's kind of the trick, too. It's how much do you reveal to people? Don't want to over-bog it down. That's, I think, where people get... We talked about bogging down before. You can get bogged down with continuity sometimes where you've got to wrap your head around so much of it that you lose a good story. He does a great job of bringing in little blurbs and little tidbits that you go, oh, yeah, cool. But it never takes you away that there's a larger event going on around it that's accessible by everyone. And I think that's the trick to using continuity. It's good to feel that there's a rich history there because that makes the characters feel more real. We all have personal continuities. We have our whole lives. And that's where I think, to me, continuity is important in comics, is that it makes the characters feel like they're in a living, breathing, thriving world. You don't have to have read all of it. The Streak thing, I didn't read any of it. But I love that it actually happened. I love that Myron read it. That to me is interesting to know, and I'd like to kind of go back and read that now to see what that was all like. Although, you said this, did Dreek make an appearance in Emerald Twilight?
I don't think so, no. I just think it was considered that, he would have been depowered. I think it was mentioned somewhere, but the actual issue I don't know.
Do you remember what book that took place in?
Which, Emerald Twilight?
No, Dreek, the whole story with Dreek.
No, off the top of my head I don't.
Okay. I'll have to look back and see, because I'm actually interested. asking because I'm interested enough to go back and read it. Actually, if any of our listeners do know, if you're a Dreekaholic, let us know where Dreek happens. I'm actually curious to read it. I'd like to read.
Dreek happens.
Yeah, Dreek. Now, here's funny. This backup that was in here, I thought was so cool because we see the Atom and Mira inside the dark matter, and more important than what's going on with Jean Loring here is the fact that we get this idea that we are an infestation in the dark matter. This came first. There was the darkness, then came the light. It goes back into a lot of religious lore and brings that into the DCU in a way that kind of fits for everybody, because there was darkness, and then all of a sudden there was light, and then the splitting of the light was the Big Bang. That's when all these worlds formed and all that. So they've brought the whole Big Bang Theory with a religious connotation into the DC Universe in a way that I just find fascinating. That these colored lights all, and then that'll go back to, it makes me think more and more that, like, the Phantom Stranger is going to be an agent of the white.
He's got to be.
Yeah, it's because of his religious history in the DC Universe. And it adds actually a religious lore to the DC Universe in a way that I think we've seen it attempted before, and it's worked, but now brings that all together in a cohesive way that it's kind of like, wow, this is amazing that they've got this history that you can believe in storytelling-wise as far as how the universe itself formed. And it all comes together. And to have Ray Palmer be a part of that, and Mira, because I love Mira's analysis that, Jean's trying to paint this picture that the light and these people are all horrible. They're just infestations on there. But Mira relates it to the ocean, because that's her world, and coral, and how beautiful coral is, and how that adds something to life. And we see her outlook, because she's very much I don't want to say she's a dark character, but she's got and many times she's got a cynical view of things, which I kind of like about her, because she's got a little edge from that. And to see her be multifaceted like this, and not so much the rage and the anger that we've seen, but also to see that she appreciates beauty in a way, and sees beauty in a way that most of your DCU characters won't. That's what I like about characters like Aquaman. Because they're from the ocean world, they see our world differently. And Mira does that here, and I thought that was great writing.
I like the fact that we have this really kind of religious, connotations, and it's our eyes kind of into it is the man of science, is, Ray Palmer, who, has, broken down and just the research through the multiverses, through the universes and whatnot, and just that he is the quintessential scientist man, of, logic. And he's the kind of the eyes and ears. Plus, throughout this man of science is your compassion. Even as this is going on, he still has the compassion for Jean. He still has that. And I love seeing that periodically, especially we see where he goes to, where he becomes the Nook-Knock guy, but it's...
the Nook-Knock guy.
But it's great to see not only just the continuation of what was started, but just the kind of the duality nature of man, where you have this science and compassion, the religion, the science, the mysticism, all kind of at the same well. It's kind of a neat little explanation of the history of the universe.
I like Jerry Ordway's art on this because it feels classic. It's beautiful art, and it's something about when you're doing a storytelling piece like this that's showing the history of Necron and how he was all created, and their views of the Guardians as, these kind of agents against the universe, not for it.
Yeah.
That because the universe is the darkness in their eyes. So to see this from the Black Lantern perspective, and that Necron is like this thing of beauty.
He's their guardian.
Yeah.
He's the guardian
an
of
agent
the
of peace in their eyes. And that how she would have wished this for Ray had she known. If she knew then what she knows now, what she would have wished for Ray. That's it. It's interesting to see when these memory downloads what they bring to the table. Yeah. I thought that was an awkward kiss between the two of them, though. Like, there was nothing sexy about it. I thought there would be, but it really wasn't.
Well, it's a forced kiss. The forced kiss is never, a sexy, beautiful thing. It's, it's it's not a good thing. It's you gotta fan the flames of love and build the passion, lead up to that kiss, because it is in the kiss.
Oh, jeez. She looks like, what is it, Grace Jones? Is that the one that was in Conan? And she's got that vibe going on. That look doesn't work anymore.
There was one thing about this story, this section, that just had something pop into my head. We've been kind of thinking that the Guardian's great lie was just the fact that the blackness was here first. Mm-hmm. But I'm kind of wondering if this is the origin of Necron, is there more to it than that? I mean, how did Necron go back into not being in charge? I mean, what happened in this first War of Light? Is there more to that whole story? Because the first time we really saw Necron, that was in that old Alan Moore story, he didn't know about our dimension. And if this is his origin, he had to have known about the dimension we were all in because he was in it too. Did something happen back then, and that's the Guardian's great lie? Is there more to it than what we're thinking?
One of the things I was wondering is, because you see, with the chains around his neck, the dog collar kind of thing and all that, wondering if there's some binding type deal that the Guardians did to him to stop him. It was like an imprisonment or a harnessing of his power to create the light. It was kind of like a, type of deal.
Here's the question I have, though. It's actually going back to what you're saying. This manifestation we're seeing here, could this be him? I'm looking at it as one of two things. Either it's him manifesting in this other universe that you're talking about, this other dimension, or could this be him being brought from the other dimension to our dimension? Like, what are we actually seeing here? Because they're talking about it took eons for them to manifest him. Did they manifest him from that dimension to here? I don't know that this... I guess what I'm saying is I don't know that this disputes any of that he manifested in another universe or another dimension. I think that this could be him manifesting either there, or this could be them bringing him from there to here, and that's what we're seeing. Because there's nothing to indicate that where this is taking place or what actually is happening here. Because, I actually like that it's vague enough that you can kind of plug it in however you see it, depending on what you're storytelling. Because I'll be honest with you, I've read the Moore story ages ago, but my recall of it is so far... Like, I didn't connect it with this. I read it years ago, and my recall of it, I'm not connecting it with this because I didn't connect Necron at all. And now that I am, I want to go back and reread that story to see. But when you were talking about the different dimension, I'm like, well, but this could take place in a different dimension, or this could be them bringing him over. But, I mean, do you guys see it that way, or do you see it differently?
I was kind of seeing it as that when the white light splintered, the darkness formed Necron to be a guardian at that point, and that there was another conflict previously.
But if you take a look at this, for centuries after it first appeared, the white light drenched the darkness, but the darkness rose up and the light splintered. If you take a look afterwards, we have the Keepers of Life waging war against the universe, and after that, it took eons, but the darkness manifested a guardian of its own. So this formation of Necron actually... Is it the formation... I think this is the formation of Necron that we're seeing now.
That this isn't technically the same guy that we saw?
Well, no, I think it is, but it's this... I don't know if it's a remanifestation of him or a pulling from... Because when we're talking about eons, I'm taking that we're seeing him... This is the manifestation that we're seeing now of him. And maybe I'm reading it differently than you guys, and that's cool. We would, because it's not spelled out. But when the eons thing, I took it as eons after the events that we're seeing here. Like in the first two on this page, the first two panels here, it took eons, because if you look chronologically, the way this story's being... Because they're telling the story in chronological order. Okay. So now we're talking... And maybe I'm reading it differently than you guys, and that's cool. It's just my interpretation that this is now the manifestation of that we're seeing of Necron here. So could it be him being pulled over from that, or like you're saying, Jim, a remanifestation? I don't know. I like this. It's interesting to see, or is it the initial manifestation of him from way in the past? I don't know.
Yeah, I don't know. Like you said, it's nebulous enough that it could be any of those things.
And that's part of the cool thing about the story, that we're getting still the information, but there's still new pieces to the puzzle we're learning. as we go along.
Because I can see it Myron's way too. That's what I kind of like about it. I like debates about stuff like this. I like talking because I do think you can see it multiple ways. So I don't think anything I've said here disputes anything Myron said. I like that, though. I think to me that's where stories get deep, where you're left to make your own interpretations, put it together. It'd be a fun comic convention debate to have like a group of on a panel, a bunch of people talking about the origins of Necron.
That's where speculation is really a fun part of the hobby. When we were talking about Blackest Night 5 and 6 last time, I was talking about how I thought Indigo 1 might be that child that Abin-Sur rescued, and someone asked Jeff Johns that question in an interview, and he said no, that's not. There's no tie to that story whatsoever in that event. So there's more to that story than what we thought, but it's not what everybody was speculating it was going to be.
I say you're all wrong and I'm right.
That's why you put on the orange ring.
Exactly.
Yeah. Well, I'm like, you and I are having this we're having this hearty debate over this, and he's putting on the orange ring. I'm like, what in the world is he doing?
Here's the plan I was thinking I was going to do, and I'm not going to actually do this for the recording because it would be too annoying even for me. I was going to periodically put on a different ring and then do the different personality along with the ring. I was thinking it'd be kind of funny to do.
I thought you were already doing it.
No.
Now the real question should be: does that mean that I think you were being annoying? I'm kidding. I'm totally no. I'm only teasing because you said that. Yeah, I know the red one's going.
Red one's coming on now, baby. Hoorah!
And you know what? I admit I deserve it. I'll put on fear. What would I put on to be humble at this point, or apologetic?
You don't want me to put on the black ring. Trust me. Because, the only thing I think of when I think of the undead...
Well, that would mean you'd be in an urn. I actually kind of wanted you to put that
on. Actually, I was thinking more of Michael Jackson Thriller.
Huh?
If I go undead, I'm going to start dancing and singing.
And then I'm going to go flush your ashes. Make you watch it. Yeah. But one of the things I really liked about this was that we got to see time placement not only with the past of this, but with the present day, with Batman. We got to see this from their perspective, because they weren't there for that. And seeing Bruce when he's fishing out the rings, and then what's happening with Barry, Hal, and Clark, and the fact that they're being pulled by Necron and his war to finally take away this infestation of the light. He brought them back for the purpose of having basically sleeper agents in place, ready to react and activate at this point.
You think about that, it's a really good plan. It's
a great plan. And that's, I love
Earth's
that about
mightiest
this.
heroes are now your agents.
It's a deep event, and I think it's where, is there too much? That's where I'm like, well, no, I can't get enough. Because it's adding a lore and a history. It feels as epic as things like Lord of the Rings and stuff like that. I grew up reading that, and I like Terry Brooks' work in Sword of Shannara and how those have led to multiple books. And throughout those books, he's developed a rich lore and history to his world. And I always liked that about Tolkien, that Tolkien's world was much larger than what you saw in The Hobbit and The Lord of the Rings. He created a history for it that goes all the way back. And that, to me, is something that I think we're seeing here. This is a Lord of the Rings-style epic that it touches on the entire universe. You can focus on just the main event like you would The Hobbit or The Lord of the Rings, or very similar to Tolkien, you can go read the Silmarillion, you can go read the Unfinished Tales and the Lost Tales and all the books like that are out there, and see the larger world. You don't have to read all of those things unless you want to. You can read just The Hobbit and Lord of the Rings and get the story of the hobbits.
Yeah.
Which the Green Lanterns are like the hobbits in this case. But if you want to know about the elves and all that, go read the other books. Because the Silmarillion, I actually read the Silmarillion. That was all about the history of the elves, really. The hobbits don't actually appear in that book till the very end. And it's more of the prehistory of the universe. So this story has a lot of connections to that type of storytelling, which is interesting. It's an epic. It's big. It's huge. I don't want all my comics doing this. I like having one big one that I'm following, and then they have the balance of a book. Like Wonder Woman was a great example. Power Girl. Jonah Hex is fantastic for that. It's what I got from Vigilante. I need those books as well, where they're contained books where you can really kind of delve into solid, focused character development stories. But there's something about an epic like this one. It's good, and it's done well. I like crossovers. Going back to our, we talked about Secret War in the beginning. I liked Secret War 2. I mean, I really enjoyed that because I like those sweeping epics. But I need the balance as well. I think it's financially, I'm able to read enough books along with this right now. I think it would be harder for me, and that's where I can understand it, if I couldn't read different styles of storytelling outside of this.
Yeah.
I think I might have a different opinion, but I'm liking it like this. It's fun, so it's good. Let's talk about some of the tie-ins.
Okay. Just to go back to the Dreek story, that took place in Green Lantern 217 to 219. I happened to look it up while we were talking.
Cool. Yeah, I want to read that one, so thanks for that.
Come on, Skreel. Let's pay these Plutonian beam makers a visit.
Okay, I'll just kick off, because I was just asking everybody if I'm the only one who actually wants to, take like a little staff and make a little staff sticks kind of deal and put the actual, Indigo logo on it, because you see them, they're carrying the staffs, they're not actually ring slingers, so you have the full collection of the rings, but you also got the staff.
But you want the Indigo ring and staff? Is that what you're saying?
Well,
because they wear the ring too.
I don't think they wear a ring.
Yeah.
I thought they just had the staff.
No, they have the ring. Remember, we had this discussion before.
No, we haven't.
Yes, we have. We had it on the show during the time when we saw the Indigos, and then we had listeners who called in and emailed and stuff like that. Don't you remember any of this? They have a ring.
No.
Go back and look at the books. They have a ring. They have a ring and the staff.
I don't remember this discussion at all.
Yeah, they have.
I was just thinking of it. Wow,
the ring that you have isn't like a random thing. They actually have a ring.
Oh, okay.
They use the staff to manifest some of their... But
see, I thought they just had the staff, and they're just using their kind of like...
Because the other one, in the issue that we would question where we brought this up, if you take it... You got to read the forums more, because it's in the forums. I think that's where it is. But if you look in the forums, there's actually was a post on that episode thread where they said if you look closely at that issue, not the female, but if you look at the male, there's multiple sequences with the male where you see the ring on his finger, and the same thing with the female. There's a ring.
Okay. Well, then, okay, yeah.
But do you still want your... Now, let's go back to the original discussion.
Now,
do you want the staff?
I still want the staff. I still want the staff because I think...
How little are you going to make this staff?
Well...
Are you going to make it, or do you want one pre-made?
Well, I have no artistic ability, so I don't know if I'll be able to, but I'd like to try. Just, get a piece of wood and kind of deal. But you figure if this is the rings that, either you have to go full-scale size by comparison, because we got a full-scale ring, or...
So you're going to make a sensei-sized staff.
Right. Okay. Or do just a small kind of mock-up thing and put it, so when the ring sits there, it sits through, and it's like on the staff. So do a smaller model size. But that's not the way,
the ring isn't on the... Oh, you're talking about it's like a display size.
Yeah, it's a display size, kind of deal.
If you make it out of wood, make sure you smooth it so you don't get a splinter, because then you could get a staph infection.
Dun-dun-dun.
Wow.
I honestly do not remember having this conversation at all.
Maybe I had it on the forum then.
Yeah.
We have a forum.
Yay! Come on. I've contributed. I came out swinging.
You did actually. I was quite impressed with it today. Can we guys talk a little bit about Power Shazam, the Blackest Night tie-in first, Power Shazam number 48?
Dude, this was awesome. This was one of those... Oh.
Wait, Myron, did you read 52?
Yes.
Okay.
Yes, I did.
So, we've all read 52, so Osiris is a character we all know from 52. I loved him in 52, and Sobek. I didn't know how this was going to work, because I'm like, well, really, everybody he's connected to is...
dead,
for all extensive purposes. And I love that they play off of that history. What I didn't expect was... due to the magic element of it, Osiris would come back coherent. The Ring is fighting to...
take control and make him evil, but he's still stronger and able to hold it back. And I thought that was a cool element, to bring into play. That this magic does have an effect on it. Magic has a little bit of manipulation, but it's not even just magic. It's, this is the, Captain Marvel magic. This is the Rock of Eternity. So that, I think, has maybe something more to do with it. Maybe, the Marvel family... it will be a great weapon against the Black Lanterns.
Who? Who in particular?
Isn't Freddy around?
That'd be the only one.
Yeah.
We said the Marvel family. I'm like,
well, okay,
that's one dude.
Yeah.
There's nobody really around still. So that's the funny part, because Black Adam and Isis are both statues. We've got Billy and Mary are depowered, and I like that we got to see them.
Yeah.
They're analyzing. We got to see what they're currently up to, and that they're still depowered. We get to see Sobek come back once again, the man who made the Osiris Lunchables.
But I chuckled at that. I was just like, oh, come on, don't do it again, dude. But he's under one. It's funny how much of that was influence of Black Lantern, how much of that was actually just Sobek being Sobek.
It is interesting though how he has to take a look at Sobek now and realize that he's got this thirst for revenge against Sobek. Sobek is... Do you think Sobek was genuinely trying to make peace there? Or do you think he was trying to manipulate him?
That was a setup.
Mm-hmm.
Pure setup. That was pure Black Lantern ring setup kind of deal. But it's funny because it's Black Lantern setup against another Black Lantern.
I thought it was neat that Osiris actually has an aura.
Yeah. Which was kind of cool. Because of the fact that the magic's in there, he has feelings and emotions that he could actually read. That was cool.
Mm-hmm.
But this is really a good issue.
Yeah, the one thing I liked is showing why he came back as Black Lantern Jr. or whatever Osiris was calling. Well, came back as Osiris. I guess that was his powered up name. How because he didn't die with his powers on, and that's actually how Sobek was able to chomp on him. But they show, and there's just the little panel when they're showing Billy and Mary's status being powered down, that they're saying, see, this is what's going on here. Black Adam used some of his powers to transform him, so when he was buried, he would be buried as just as a champion, as a prince, and he would go on to the afterlife in that fashion, not just as who he was. I thought that was a nice little touch into it, because you think about it, he wouldn't have had, he didn't die with the power activated.
Eric Wallace and Don Kramer did a good job here. Don Kramer did a great job of... Jerry Ordway was writer and artist on a lot of Power of Shazam. He was the writer on, I think, all of it, if I remember correctly. I think he did the artwork on most of it as well, but I love how this thematically, it does feel very much like it connects to that book. It's an interesting epilogue for Osiris, though, because it's really a redemption for him. He has an opportunity here to sacrifice himself for the good of his people.
Yeah.
Just realizing that, so he takes out Sobek in himself using the magic at that point, and it was the lightning that...
Yeah, he calls down the lightning.
Yeah.
I thought that was a great, he finally got his hero's death, because you think about it, going through 52, he wanted to be the hero. He wanted to do the right thing and be the good guy, and it was just the situations really prevented it from happening. He got set up multiple times along the way by Sobek, by the Four Horsemen, by all the various forces against them, and you kind of get to see the guy finally get some peace of, some rest in peace kind of deal.
Blackest Night Catwoman. I was a big fan of the Catwoman series, and to bring in this storyline with Maggie, her sister, which it looks like, to a certain extent, this is going to lead into something that we're going to see later.
Oh, we're definitely seeing this later in the Gotham Sirens. Those great setup and just the ending panels alone. You're like, okay, this story ain't done yet.
But the original Black Mask back, and just seeing the distinction of the differences between him and the battle between the two of them, I love that she recognized she needed backup, she needed help, and it wasn't really sure how much to tell Harley and Ivy about her sister and him and what all went down there. That was an interesting distinction, but it shows a difference in their relationship than other heroes and friends in the DC universe, for example. And I kind of liked that.
And I like the fact that when she throws out the sister, they didn't ask any details, but they still had her back. They still were like, okay, we're going to help you out with this. And this wasn't one of those villain team-up things where someone would double-cross or abandon in the middle of it if things get tough. We're seeing a solid friendship developing among these three villains. And this is kind of like the Rogues, the level of trust and friendship that the Rogues have.
Except the Rogues would have revealed the sister, to a certain extent, I think. The closest Rogues.
Yeah.
This is a point of weakness for her. It's a point of emotional weakness for her. She would not reveal this willingly. except when faced with a situation like this where her hand's been played at this point and she has to. So we get to see that Maggie, a lot more coherent than Selina even realized. And now she's got to deal with that, with Black Mask hunting her down to use her again against Selina. So it is funny how I could see why Maggie would have resentment of her sister. Deep personal resentment of her sister. And emotionally, that would be something to play on Selina, because she's got to deal with the fact that my sister is going to hate me forever because of this event. Yeah. So it does show where this event is going to play into her future. And can her sister ever forgive her for this? Selina's a victim of circumstance here. Yeah. It's not really... It's Selina's fault for being Catwoman, but it's really not, Black Mask's fault.
Yeah, and it's a displacement of anger really is directed towards Catwoman, not towards the person that actually did the horrific things.
Well, if she'd never become a cat burglar, though, and never headed down that path, she wouldn't be forced into these circumstances. So there is a responsibility on Catwoman there that, yes, Black Mask for what he's doing to her, but she's been pulled into these events because of Catwoman's lifestyle. So, yes, I agree with you. You're right, it should be on Black Mask, but it is something where I can understand the internal guilt that Selina feels over all this. Because of her lifestyle, it has enabled this to be a possibility. Mm-hmm. Who would have thunk? But
right, yeah, it's one of those things where you can't even think that this could possibly happen, and it's the dangers of when you're doing the dangers of the life as a mask, mm-hmm. whether you're hero or villain. Your enemies will target those you care about. Will go after the ones you love, and right here we're seeing a prime example of that. And one of the things I really digged on this was that initial fight. When Mask is trying to get the fear out of her, and he keeps doing all that stuff, and she's sitting there, and he's got her beat. She knows he's regenerating. She rips his tongue and his lower jaw off, and it doesn't stop him. She knows there's a level to this, and she's like, okay, if this is how I'm going to go out, I won't give him the satisfaction. And she just starts generating just pure will. All the fear is gone. He wanted her to be afraid. He wanted her to suffer. She wasn't going to give him that emotional response that he wanted. And I thought that was just a really cool, moment of the character that, and I don't even think she wouldn't, didn't technically know about the emotional spectrum, but she knew what he wanted out of her. She's like, I ain't doing that. You're not gonna, I'm not your little, kitty cat to play with. This is it. And I thought that was just the art sequence in this panel when you're showing her in the color spectrum. We always say that's a cool thing, but just the artwork in that panel where you see the determination in her eyes and just the etching of her face throughout that. I was just like, dang, this is a really cool picture.
It's a very pretty book, this one.
Oh yeah. And I tell you, story-wise, just talking about the torture, that for me was just like a wow kind of moment.
Did you read that?
What?
Did you read that when that actually happened?
No.
That actually happened in the comic.
Yeah, I want to read it now, to be honest with you, in a sick way, but one thing that got me here is when Maggie's just telling, Selina, like, do you know what it sounded like when his eyes were cut out? He made a scream that wasn't, quite him. It wasn't even, it sounded almost female, feminine. It was such a scream. And I was just like, wow, that, you think about just, any torture sequences I've seen in movies, the Saw movies kind of deal where you're just like, wow. But that is just a horrific moment. And I was just like, whoa, this is a nasty dude. And I was like, wow. It was something, I put it down and I immediately wanted to read the original source material, just because of the horrific nature of it. I was like, wow, this had to be just a powerful one of those moments that when you're reading it.
Was Stephanie Brown as Robin before we started doing the show? Do you remember any of that?
Stephanie Brown wasn't Robin when we were doing the show.
Was she already dead?
Yeah, she was already dead.
Or quote-unquote dead?
Yeah.
Okay, because I'm trying to remember placement-wise when this all happened. Because Tim was already... Back again?
Yeah.
Okay. Because it was only a short period where Stephanie was...
Because I came back 1 year later.
Right, okay, that's a good point, yeah. That would have been all before that. Wow. It all seems more recent to me. That's why I was like, wow, really? This whole Black... So Were you around for Black Mask's death?
No. Well, I was around, but I wasn't reading Catwoman.
Right.
You know, I wasn't reading... Catwoman wasn't the title I was reading for some reason.
Right.
I don't even remember...
No, you were reading a lot less back then. That's interesting. I like this bit with... talking about battles. The battle with Harley, Ivy, and Black Mask. Where the two of them are teaming up together, and he drops a building on them. I thought that was a great bit. Because, obviously, I think Harley would be dead if Ivy hadn't been there.
Yeah. Well, Harley, you know, improvise, adapt, and overcome. She's, you know, you talk
she has
about
ways of surviving.
Yeah,
things
yeah.
that you don't
Catwoman
expect.
has 9 lives. I think Harley's got maybe 12. You know, I think you learn to adapt when you're running with the Joker. So it's, you know,
to show how erratic Maggie is. You know, it's bonding with her sister at this moment and, you know, connecting with her and feeling comfort there. But then all of a sudden she twists and turns. And the events, the horrifying nature of the events of what Black Mask did with the eyes and her mouth and things like that, it was something that scarred her so bad that she turns on a dime. You're the reason I'm a widow. You're the reason Black Mask is still after me. You ruined both of our lives the days you put on that stupid costume. And it's... She doesn't know what to say. And Selina comes back and says, I killed for you. I killed to protect you, which is true. But then there's that guilt of how much of this am I responsible for? It's interesting. It's an interesting comparison to where Jon Stewart's at and where Selina is. Selina's not where Jon Stewart is. Jon Stewart can see his own place in things.
Yeah.
She can't. She can sort of, but she's not in the same comfort level or place that Jon's at. We see that confidence out of him that was great in that Green Lantern issue. This is an interesting comparison that she's not there. Go ahead.
The reason she's not in the same spot that he was is because she's never really confronted it. Right. She ran from it. You know, yeah, she took care of her sister, put her in a nice institution. But even the sister says, you know, why haven't you come to visit me lately? He's like, well, I didn't even know you could hear me. But it's one of those things where you put them in there, and she put her in the institution, and every time visiting Maggie, you know, probably brought her all those emotions back, all that guilt, all that feelings back to her, and eventually she just kind of like, I would say she just distanced herself from it. You know, maybe in her mind, you know, saying, okay, it's better if I distance myself from her so she's not in danger. Yeah, that's what I'm doing. You know, but who knows? It's, you know, when you do that, though, when she's, like, given an excuse, when she's not confronting the thing that is upsetting, the thing that is, you know, tearing at her, you know, and she buries it and hides it, it comes back. And when it comes back, it comes back in force. You know, the next time she sees Maggie and Maggie's trying to kill her, you know, and cut the costume off of her to save her, or however her mind's going to, you know, deal with this, you know, that's even going to make it even worse for her. She's got to come to terms with not only what she did, but, you know, why she did it. Now, question for you, did she ever admit that she took a life to Bruce?
Yeah, they danced around it. And I think on purpose they danced around it, because it was during the whole child thing where you know, Selina having a kid came onto the scene and all that. I think Bruce knows.
Oh, okay.
And the two of them, I just had to dance around it, because that would put him in a position where he would have to deal with it.
Yeah.
And it was an interesting, uncomfortable, well-written moment. And I mean, it's come up more than once, if I remember. I'd have to go back and reread, but I thought it came up more than once. And in all those situations, it was a typical, like, you wouldn't want to know.
Yeah, it's that situation where, like, if I tell you something, you're not going to like it. Well, then don't tell me.
But yet you got Bruce is no dummy. Bruce knows.
Yeah.
And Bruce probably always knew. But, you know, so it was one of those awkward choosing to turn a blind eye to the situation, if that makes sense, versus confronting it. I love that, because it does show that his relationship with Selina is special and unique, as far as I think it's a doomed love. He loves her, yet wants to be with her, yet can't be with her. Did you read Wyden and Geyer, number 4?
Yeah.
Okay, and I don't want to go into this. Are you reading that at all?
No, not.
Okay. I don't want to go into it too much, but it had a great moment between the two of them in there. And anybody reading it will connect with what I'm talking about there without me spoiling it, other than the Catwoman's in it. And I do think it's one of those relationships that Catwoman fits the Batman side of his relationship. There's a big problem with her and her demons and everything fitting the Bruce Wayne side of his relationship. It's cool. This is to me as much character driven as that wonderful Green Lantern issue with Jon Stewart. I'm eating this up because I'm such a big Catwoman fan, and I've loved her since my childhood. I love this character now. Both of her solo series were in the minis that she's been in have been phenomenal. It's great to see how far this character has come here. I loved the resolution of Black Mask.
Yeah.
What they did to him, that he's basically, because of the fact that he keeps regenerating, in a plant that is going to keep digesting him over and over and over again as he regenerates. It's so awesome. What a solution, because unless you do something like that, they don't have the access or power to the light that the other ones do.
They probably don't even know about what you have to do to defeat the Black Lanterns. They don't have the connections or the tie-ins to the to the superheroes that they know you need the bright light, you need to blast them with that. So I thought this was just a great. Once again, it was improvise, adapt, overcome. This is how these three roll. It was just a cool sequence, especially when Selena's like grateful and glad that she's like, I knew they'd be alive. Well, I hope they'd be alive. I was hoping something would go my way, kind of deal. Where just her, it's furthering the relationship that these three have, and it's a title that for me I'm really enjoying. I like seeing this connection to it, and a development for a future story coming out of it.
It was a great fate for Black Mask to kind of become an everlasting gobstopper for the plan. I'm not reading the Gotham City Sirens book, but this made me interested enough to want to pick up a few issues and then look into it a little bit more. I thought these two tie-ins these two one-shots were kind of interesting because the Shazam one kind of served as a bookend or a finality to a story, whereas the Catwoman book was really a catalyst to propel those characters along a little further in their own book. So I just thought those two books were interesting choices, I think. And it goes back to, I think, that when DC was looking at what books to do this with, they didn't just look at what book could we throw a Blackest Night banner on to sell a book, but what makes sense from a story standpoint to have these characters interact with the Blackest Night miniseries that's either going to tell a definitive story like Osiris and giving him a great finale, or is it something that's going to add to a book that's currently out there that makes sense?
Well, and even in the case of books where, like Doom Patrol and things like that, where I'm sure they did a Doom Patrol tie-in and a Booster Gold tie-in for the purpose of getting some notice to those books. But even in those cases, they told stories that made sense in Blackest Night versus forcing it into the main continuity of Blackest Night, if that makes sense. That's what I like about them being side stories. It makes sense. Like, this is a very character-driven Catwoman story that, honestly, you could read independent of Blackest Night. You don't need to be reading Blackest Night to enjoy this. If you're a Catwoman fan and you're listening to this and you're like, all right, I'm not reading Blackest Night. I like every so often hearing what people are thinking about Blackest Night, though. And you're reading Gotham City Sirens, pick up that issue because I think it's going to be leading into some stuff down the road. Tony Bedard did a great job, though. Even if you're a Catwoman fan, you're like, oh, I'm not reading Catwoman right now. It's a great one-off issue just to read something Catwoman-driven. That it's very character-focused issue. I thought it was very cool. I like these tie-ins and how they're working and how they're not forced into the Green Lantern world, so to speak. They're dealing with a world where there's these Black Lantern zombies running around in a way that makes sense for those particular characters in the books in question. Secret Six number 17. It's part 2 of this whole thing that kicked off in that Suicide Squad tie-in. Everything that I wanted it to be. Yeah. And I so knew it was going to be. Just continues on with basically, I don't know why I should have expected that she was going to be one of the first things we'd see kick off, that this Yasmin would be getting a ring. Yeah, that was awesome. It totally makes sense. Yeah,
I was sitting there, as soon as I saw it, I was like, oh my God, I'm an idiot, Jim. Why didn't I? That's outstanding.
And see, I thought Jim was an idiot when I was sitting. I'm like, Jim was an idiot. That's the way I deal with things. I blame you. I know the rage ring's back on. And deservedly so.
Actually, I will put on hope to calm me and keep me at peace.
Is it hope for you or hope for me?
Well, actually, it's hope for me, so I can keep it.
Because I'm hopeless.
Right. All will be well.
It is funny, though, to see... I loved seeing her history and her history with Amanda Waller come through her eyes in Deadshot and how this all happened. Because we're seeing we're seeing the events that we've already seen from a different perspective. And that's always fun with these memory downloads. Scandal back at the House of Secrets was a pretty slick moment. Because I was curious to see how they were going to get out of all this.
Yeah, and glad to see the house does have a little bit of secrets to it, not just, because when she's asking for firepower, he's like, well, Mr. Lawton has, rocket launchers. Like, no, we need something big. And I liked seeing that. And I tell you,
gargoyle?
Yeah, big gargoyle flying at them. That would definitely kind of shake some stuff up. And if that's the initial first firing, I wonder what else this house has to offer. Because it's funny because they're torching him out, trying to torch her out. And I wonder if we're going to see like a new base of operation for the Six. Are we going to find out that really the house is more mystic guardian, mystic barriers, so it looks like it was burning, but it never really was? Does it have like a kind of like regenerative type properties or something weird like that? I'm just wondering, completely fascinated by the house and what it does and what it can do and whatnot, so...
The battle with Bane and Nightshade was particularly cool because to see Bane standing toe-to-toe with a meta is always interesting. Because he won't quit. She could have ripped his arm off and I think he would have still kept coming. And it shows, talk about discipline. That was something I always liked about Bane, way back in Nightfall. Was that he, for all the brutality that he can present, even when he was on Venom, there was something about this man that he had disciplined and honed himself in such a way that he can take tremendous amounts of pain, can take tremendous amounts of punishment, and still come back being that coherent, almost cold. Now, talk about a guy who's able to detach himself. I think Bane's able to detach himself to a certain extent. Mm-hmm. But he's got, it's a little bit of a Jon Stewart going on with Bane as well. A little bit on a twisted nature.
Oh, yeah. And it's just the character, who he is. I thought that was just the cool fight sequencing going through where she's just beating on him. She's like, go down, go down. We saw that when he was being tortured,
way back when.
Yeah. And it's...
on that little cross that they had him on.
Well, had them across, throwing bricks at him.
Yeah.
That's a nice torture, by the way. You're throwing bricks at somebody and just, with some, nasty results. And he didn't go down. He didn't give up. He didn't give up anything, and he wouldn't give up anything.
But then Vertigo's power hitting him with his greatest defeat. The one, the thing that scarred him for life, really. Because... He had taken Batman to a point where he thought he had won. And then all of a sudden Jean Paul Valley came back instead of Bruce. And it just... I love that historically is still something that weighs on Bane. And he's got this... He's tortured by the Bat.
But the thing I liked is it's not really even... He's not afraid. He's just enraged. Enraged to the point that he's unable to do any logic, thought, or any... That's how he threw him off balance. It wasn't
tortured.
Yeah, and it's but it's that other side of it. And it was funny. As soon as I saw that, I was like, oh my god, are they going to give Bane a red ring?
I think that would be too much.
Oh, big time. Big time. But just can you imagine though, Bane with a red ring?
Yeah.
That would be... and then I just started thinking the different members of the Six get a different colored ring, and
see, that would be too much.
What. Yeah,
that would be too much.
Yeah. Oh, big time. But
I think it'd be funny. Well, I guess you know what? It's funny as you're saying it. I'm kind of like, well, it'd be funny to see because it's the Six, and it'd be funny to see how that manifests.
Who would get what ring?
Right. But I don't want to see that. I wouldn't mind seeing it from book, in like a book here or a book there, because I think that it would be interesting to see. But if you start fishing rings on everybody, like it worked in Rebels, for example. Right. So I wouldn't mind seeing it again. So like if Bane got a ring or something like that, I wouldn't. But then if you start doing it on every member of the Six, wouldn't that it starts to? At what point in time does it get to be too much?
Oh, it would definitely be too much. It's just one of those things where I just started going down that path in my mind, just wondering, kind of it was kind of like the Muppets, Secret Six. Which Muppets would be the Secret Six for?
Although Black Alice with the way her powers manifests, I think it would be very interesting, because I liked seeing what happened with her and Nightshade. How I knew right away in that panel where it says, wait, something's wrong, it's not working. Not for you, it isn't, and it was Black. I knew right away it was going to be Black Alice, and I loved it. Was just such a great panel of her messing around with those powers, and how she actually, because we saw it with Jeanette, she takes that away from them at that moment, a piece of them away from them, and it's not working, and she was able to hold that back from them. I love that.
Yeah, and I like just the whole play. She's like, she was playing him. Oh, you guys thought I was unconscious? No, I wasn't. Bam! And then right after that, we get the Bane going, nice job, little one. Just giving her the props she needs, because we got Bane back. Now, once Vertigo was out of the picture, right back to the emotional discipline, right back to being who he is. And I thought that was just a cool sequencing going through, but as that's happening, we got, Scandal saying, hey, we got a problem here. We're being played. It's a setup. I was going through it, I'm reading through this thing, flying through it, going, yeah, this is awesome. And it's a Blackest Night tie-in, but it's still the current story arc going on with them. I was just like, yeah.
Also, Bane seeing Scandal hurt one too many times is what's going on here. He does not want to see Scandal in the face of danger. When arguably, it's kind of funny, because Scandal's nature of being semi-immortal, she has technically more invulnerability than even he does.
Yeah, now, is she like a fast healer kind of deal, or does she got to do the whole, ingesting genetics from family members, or how does she keep her immortality
Well, we've seen her fast. Well, I don't know, fast healing's the right word, but she takes intense amount of damage. Yeah. She's capable of taking. I don't think she if you chop her head off, I think she's pretty much done for. She definitely can take a lot more than most. So I don't think we know the full extent of what she can do yet, other than we've seen that she can take an intense amount of damage. I think she can take more than Bane from the way it's been presented, which is an interesting distinction here. Yeah, he feels like this protective. I want to know what their relationship. We do not know yet what that relationship is. I thought I knew.
Yeah,
I don't fully know what that relationship is, and I want to know.
Yeah, and I like the fact that he's like, no, you were supposed to be safe. Mm-hmm. And that's why he's leaving her behind to keep her safe, and he's finding out that that's not keeping her safe. This is a great way to bring her back into the team and basically have him reverse his previous decisions to kick her off the team. Right. So we're going to have a Secret 7 going on unless Alice leaves. That's the first thought that's going through my head is, if we're bringing back, Scandal, we now have a 7. And are they going to keep running with 7? Or are they going to get rid of Alice? Is Alice going to say, hey, this ain't for me, I'm tapping out, goodbye? Or will somebody else leave?
The bit in the jail is probably one of my favorite bits. Because I love the criminals asking for release. Now, I got to be honest with you. If I'm seeing this kind of zombie nonsense going on out there where they're just killing all the guards, I think I want to be in my cell. I want to be safe in my cell.
Curled up at the back corner.
Yeah, where it's nice and safe. I mean, that's where you want to be. Why in the world would you ask to be released by them? Wouldn't you want them to leave and then, try to find your own way? I'd be looking for a spoon, figuring, okay, the guards are gone, I can dig my way out.
Yeah. There have been stories about just different prison riots and stuff like that where some of the inmates who were close to getting out, didn't want to have anything to do with the riots, but because they weren't getting involved in a riot, it kind of made them targets by those who were. So they're sitting there, so you have this craziness and chaos that's going on in a full-scale riot, but you also have these inmates who are going, I'm not helping them, I'm hiding, and they're literally, as you said, curled up in the corner of their cells. They got their doors to their cells or their pods or whatever the situation shut. They're trying to keep themselves away from the rioting prisoners, just like with the regular cops. They just want to do their time and get out.
It was interesting to see the color scheme in that particular segment. It's Jason Wright again, a colorist. I really like what he does on this book. I love how you see with the guards, you see mainly it's fear because of what's going on around them, but you see some will, you see some rage, and those moments in there. But then when we get to the inmates, if you see this whole sequence with the inmates and then you see it again from the color spectrum. It's the same inmates in the same positions. You see one with greed. You see the ones with rage. And you see the one with fear. And how the rage is overtaking them, and that rage is their predominant emotion. They're not thinking straight. Rage is one of those emotions where you don't think straight.
Right.
Whereas the guy with the fear probably is the most rational fellow. I'd be doing what he's doing. He's chucking his cookies over there, and rightfully so. But it's just a very well put together. Jim Califiore's art. I loved him on Aquaman. I really like him here.
Yeah, and it's the art style is...
This is Gotham Underground, too, which is great.
The art style they're using here is a little bit... I don't want to say gritty, but it's a different edge, a different appearance than the previous stuff was going on. And Secret Six is a dark comic, so you have this dark edge, but this is just... I
was wondering where you were going with that. I'm like, as opposed to the brighter and happier issues of Secret Six?
I know, that's why it's hard to say. I can't say like the other stuff isn't
It's not
gritty.
as family-friendly as the stuff that came before.
It's a different look and a different feel to it. Okay. And I think for me, and I don't know if part of it is just because it's under the Blackest Night thing, if I'm seeing that, if it's kind of got that whole, it still has that same kind of zombie type feel to it, so it's got that, kind of vibe going, and I don't know if it's that I'm seeing this darker, kind of grit to it, or if it's, I don't know. It's one of those weird things. When I read this, I agree with you completely about how this was some great artwork. I did notice, obviously, the difference in the art team, than the normal team that's on the Six. But I kind of attuned it to the fact that they changed things up a little bit to tell a little bit different story, tell a little bit of a vibe to it, because this does have...
Well, it falls right off of the Suicide Squad issue, though. This will be collected nicely.
Oh, yeah.
Into a trade, because it really does have a nice thematic feel all the way through. Now, I told you this. I don't know how you thought this battle wasn't going to happen. Because it was so set up so well.
Again, okay.
I wanted... No, I didn't mean it. I really did not mean it that way.
I know. But
this is a battle I'm like, I can't imagine them not doing this. Catman versus Bronze Tiger. And, I so wanted to see it. And honestly, a lot closer than I thought it was going to be.
Yeah.
Because it was great to see, Catman basically taking advantage of every dirty trick in the book to try and fight with, and Bronze Tiger too.
Here's the thing. Now,
his lack of style was what helped him, because the fact that he's more relies on those animal instincts, the animal.
It's the chaos theory kind of.
Yeah, which actually works against a martial artist who's trying to get a read on him. And I love that distinction that Bronze Tiger, if this had been a martial artist, the best martial artist, this would be a very different sort of battle than the two. This is down and dirty, and...
He bit him. Come on.
Right.
That's talking right there. That's a...
He went for the jugular. He literally went for the jugular.
That was cat fighting there.
Yeah.
Now, who do you say wins the fight? Because I'm calling this a draw. Because they're both, in the end, they're both down. Now, the last man standing was Bronze Tiger, so maybe you'd say, yeah, he won, but, did he win? They're both...
Depends on if the Bronze Tiger stayed standing long enough for a 10 count.
Yeah,
It was an immoral victory for Catman, is the way I'm looking at it.
It was a double count-out.
You can't really call it a moral victory, so I'm going to call it an immoral victory for Catman. Just in the sense that Bronze Tiger fell, and honestly, out of the two, unless Bronze Tiger has some help, he's dead. That he's got that 5 minutes to basically... Yeah. Whereas Catman, I took it as Catman's going to wake up and be just fine, other than some aches and pains. It was a good battle.
Yeah.
Because you're right, it was one of those where at the end, neither of them lost anything. As far as...
Well, they lost a lot of blood.
But I'm saying, as far as looking impressive, though, two powerful fighters in the DCU that I want to see the rematch.
Yeah.
It felt very much like a wrestling program. I'm like, okay, that was epic.
Yeah.
It was a 5-star fight. I want to see them fight more. Let's do it again.
You can hear the chant, "Match of the year! Match of the year!"
Yeah, I want to see the two of them duke it out again. Yeah. It was very well choreographed. That was a great, great fight.
Let's throw them in a cage, though.
Oh, yeah, next time it's got to be, it's got to be something a little bit more epic, yeah. Roulette's got to be involved, maybe.
Ooh.
I could see that. I could see an issue where Gale goes there with Roulette doing a match like that.
Oh, sure. I mean, it's, as I'm saying, where something really epic. But this is more of, again, I'd like to see a Suicide Squad book. Imagine the two of them having their own little universe and seeing the Suicide Squad every so often team up with the Six. There's room for the Suicide Squad. I'm sorry, I want to see that book.
Agree completely.
Jeanette's continued fight. Well, actually, Ragdoll is the best for comedic sequences because you've got him dancing to the whole fiddle, and I love his dance. I'll dance on your grave, hussy. A little rumba, a bit of fandango, a touch of cha-cha-cha. His dialogue just always works for me. I love... Ragdoll is my MVP of this book. Every issue that Ragdoll talks in, there is something I laugh at. And it's where you get an interesting twisted balance to this. But Jeanette and Virtuosa, if anyone is a mistress of Deathchild, it is me. The doll is annoying little degenerate, Virtuosa. But he is our annoying little degenerate. If someone is going to degrade and torture him, it will be us. Most likely me. A character out of this book totally created for Secret Six that I've become very protective of in Jeanette.
Oh, yeah.
Because Vicious, wicked dialogue, there's something about her. She reminds me of the romantic nature of books like Anne Rice's books, where you get those characters like Lestat and so. There's something romantic, there's something sexy about them, yet they're dark.
And they could kill you in a heartbeat.
Yes, and yet there's that, but there's a sexiness about that too. Yeah. She's got that quality to her, and it's a good thing to do with a Banshee style character, and I like that about her.
If I still had my, I'm certain they'd be ruptured.
But just some great moments with the two, and then of course the Fiddler shows up, the original Fiddler, and we get to see what the nature of what he does to Jeanette. Talk about horrifying. Jeanette and Ragdoll in those moments with the bleeding eyes and the look of torture out of the two of them. I mean, he took down a Banshee in full Banshee mode.
Yeah.
She wasn't able to do anything to him.
Yeah, and it to me, did he use the screen back at her? Was he able to, channel it and fire it back to her? Or, because that's how I kind of he took that power and just redirected it.
See, I didn't take it that way as much as I think he just took the full brunt of it and went on and did his own thing. Because he said screaming is not music, my dear. It is mere cacophony. So rather than him using it, he made music of his own.
This is music. Bam!
Right.
And hits her with it. Okay.
So saying, you gave me your best shot, but I'm giving it... It's like if Black Canary did her sonic scream on him, for example. He then would go off and do kind of his own thing. At least that's the way I took it. But I love the Warden Jessup things going over, periodically we get to see...
Everything's okay!
Everything is just fine. There's, everything, just please relax. There's no cause for alarm. And then, of course, we go back to Flag and Yasmin and Deadshot and getting to see, the nice little cliffhanger with them. And, of course, Bane and Black Alice and the villains coming in. Just, I don't know, it's a very cool... I'm glad that this was a three-parter.
My question for you guys, real quick. When Yasmin's looking at Deadshot, she's not seeing the solid color. Is it because he's got his emotions in check and there are only sparks of it? Or is there something more blocking it or guarding it? Is there something more to that? If you look at the panel... it's you see the solid outline, then just little sparks of the color. It's not his whole body is in the color, spectrums. I don't know if I don't know if there's something. If it's just because we always talk about him being, keeping his emotions in check, and that's just the way he is. So there's only little sparks and little hints of it.
It's because he's unconscious. He's still rousing. He's not awake yet.
Oh, okay. That would make sense then. Okay.
That's the way I took it. He wasn't quite conscious yet.
He's just kind of coming out of being unconscious, and that was just a little sparks of...
So as he's coming out, he's coming into it, okay.
Because in order to have emotion, you have to be... I would assume you have some emotion when you're dreaming, but that's not the concrete emotion that they're looking for. That's interesting that I think this is one of the first characters we've actually seen a close-up of who's asleep.
Okay.
Or knocked out.
Unconscious, yeah. And as he's coming back...
So we're seeing some will, we're seeing some rage, but not quite anything else yet. I don't know. That's the way I took it, but good that you pointed that out, because I had to think about that for a second.
Okay.
What am I...
The final panel of Bane just telling, run like hell. That right there, if you're making Bane... make that type of statement and that type of just raw emotional response, it's bad.
Or it's a good strategy move. I don't know that I took it as much as because I don't know that I would see fear on Bane if we saw it at that moment. As a squad leader, strategic withdrawal would be a good move at this point, because their numbers and what they're dealing with is not something they can handle at this point. They need to withdraw, pull back, and come up with a better plan because they don't have one at the moment.
Yeah,
so for that fits for Bane. I agree with you that there's emotion there, and
that's beyond.
I would love to see.
Command.
I would love to see what
his
colors,
emotional spectrum is. Yeah,
it looks like that because I don't know with Bane that it's easy to pin down what that looks like. So it fits him though to say at this point with this situation, let's get out of here and withdraw. I don't see Bane. I don't know. Would Bane walk away from this, or would Bane come back? I don't know. It'll be interesting to see how they react in issue 18.
Yeah.
I want to see where this goes.
Well, Bane will pull out the team, try to get away from it, and put some distance between them and the undead.
He's also got Scandal to worry about.
Yeah.
He would. I think we would see fear from him about Scandal.
Yeah.
Fear for her safety.
Could be, definitely. Yeah, I want to see him on the color spectrum just to see what he looks like.
Great issue, though.
Yeah.
Did you guys have a favorite tie-in this week out of the three? There's no right or wrong there. Did you guys have a favorite, or was it just kind of like the whole experience? Myron, do you have one that like kind of stood out for you? You're like, wow, that was cool, or?
I enjoyed all three of them for different reasons. I think, if I had to pick a favorite, I would have to say Secret Six, just because I love the book.
Jim, did you have a favorite?
Yeah, see, I'm throwing out initially the Secret Six because it's the continuation of the story. It was a great story, and I was hooping and hollering along with it. But if I had to say, looking at it as a tie-in type deal, I'd say Secret Six again.
Well, I think for me, Secret Six is my favorite book right now. So I don't know if that's even
something else.
I gotta say, a lot of props to Tony Bedard for what he did with Catwoman. I loved the Catwoman spotlight. Secret Six is my favorite book, so I mean that's kind of a gimme that I was great to see the Six involved in this and how
with their own little take and their own.
I still feel I think one of the things out of this is I would love to see a Suicide Squad series. So that's something where I think the Six right now in the Suicide Squad crossover is really making me want to see them in a series. It's probably the book that I want to see as much. I want to see Mira in a series coming out of this, and I want to see Suicide Squad in a series coming out of Blackest Night. It's funny how I didn't expect either of those situations, and that's standing for me. I want to know what's going on with the Shazam family. I want to see them in the DCU. So that was something that came out of the Osiris issue.
See, here's the thing. That's interesting you say that, because like with the Catwoman one, it made me want to go and read what had actually happened. Mm-hmm. Read that story. With the Osiris one, I was like, okay, I'm at peace now with what happened to him. I do want to read some stuff on with the whole Marvel family and just see them, what they're going to do and bring them back in the picture. But that issue didn't getting me charged to read a new series. I enjoyed it and made me remember the stuff I liked about it. But I read that more
Billy and Mary did though. I agree with you. No, it didn't for Osiris. I'm not sitting here saying I want an Osiris book.
No. The whole Marvel,
Osiris is done.
Overall Marvel family, right?
Yeah. So they did a great job of ending. I thought Osiris at this point. It's funny. I'm in a place where I'm like, we're done with Osiris.
Yeah, the story is now complete. We have the beginning, middle, end.
Right.
Done.
That was a great conclusion for Osiris permanently. I do want to see Billy and Mary though. I think it's because I'm enjoying Power of Shazam so much, and then I see this book that or Magic of Shazam. I'm sorry, Magic of Shazam. Billy Batson and the Magic of Shazam. I'm enjoying that so much that I want to see those characters continue on in the DCU, and this little teaser of those two characters in particular. I'm very Billy and Mary happy.
Yeah.
So I'd like to see them, but I mean I don't know. These are great. This is a great week for tie-ins. Our sponsors for this episode are DCBService.com and InStockTrades.com. Check out Green Arrow number 30 run. J.T. Cruel comes onto the book. Regularly $2.99, 40% off, only $1.79 at DCBService.com. Our friends at InStockTrades.com. JLA Avengers, the once-in-a-lifetime crossover that brought two super teams together and rocked the comics world, is at last available in trade paperback. This is the 4-issue co-publishing event by DC and Marvel, written by Kurt Busiek, with stunning art by George Perez, and this collection also features introductions by Original Avengers writer-editor Stan Lee and Justice League of America editor Julius Schwartz. It's 208 pages, $19.99 regularly, 47% off, only $10.59. Remember, orders over $50 get free shipping, so if you've got some trades and things that you've been looking for, go to InStockTrades.com. Get that free shipping. That's more savings, so it's very cool. That's the way I usually grab things from InStockTrades.com. There's always stuff that I want to get that I missed out on when I was doing my pre-orders a lot of times. I've just been getting the rest of the Justice League International hardcovers, as a matter of fact, that they have there. I think it's very cool to be able to kind of get 2 or 3 things together and usually get that $50 deal. So it's very cool. So thank you, InStockTrades.com, for continuing to support the show. We're going to be back in a few days with part 2 of this episode. We're going to definitely be talking some Green Lantern Corps. We're going to be chatting about Outsiders. And we have some listener voicemails that I know we got in that I'd like to put onto the show as well. I think some of those are for episode 200. I haven't listened to all of them yet. But I definitely, any of the voicemails that we would get, I'd like to put on and get on that episode as well and get our comments on that. So we'll be back in a few days with part 2 of this, 196B.
Bye.